My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 21 years old, and until this past Christmas, I honestly thought I understood my place in my family. I knew we were tight on money, that there was never enough to go around, and I built my whole personality around being the chill, low-maintenance daughter who didn't ask for much. Double shifts at the campus diner? Fine. Instant noodles for the third night in a row? Whatever. Watching my friends book spring break trips while I calculated whether I could afford laundry that week? Just part of the deal when you're the first one in the family to make it to college. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. This year, I came home for Christmas completely drained, but weirdly proud. I'd just survived another semester on a cocktail of student loans, caffeine, and sheer stubbornness. I'd maxed out another credit line for textbooks, lied to my friends that I was skipping parties to focus, and forced myself to believe that all this struggle would someday turn into a degree and a better life. It never crossed my mind that the real reason I was drowning in debt was sitting in the same room, clinking glasses and laughing under fairy lights. We were all squeezed around the dining table, the kind of chaotic holiday scene you'd see in a cheesy movie. Burnt rolls, lumpy gravy, kids shrieking over a board game. Someone made a joke about who ruined the mashed potatoes, and everyone was talking over each other when my grandma lifted her glass, smiled at me, and said the sentence that cracked my whole reality in half. "To our Natalie," she said warmly, eyes shining. "I'm so glad you're finally getting to enjoy that college fund we set up for you. All those years of saving were worth it." For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard her. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against my plate, loud enough to cut through the chatter. My stomach dropped. "What fund?" I asked, louder than I meant to. The room didn't just go quiet. It went dead. My mom actually choked on her drink, coughing into her napkin like her lungs forgot how to work. My dad went the color of the white tablecloth, every bit of warmth draining from his face. On the other side of the table, my little cousin froze mid-bite and stared, then leaned toward me and whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Wait, you didn't know?" In that second, with the Christmas tree blinking in the corner and 6 pairs of eyes pointed at me, I realized this wasn't some cute family surprise. This was a secret, a huge one, and it had been kept from exactly one person, the girl it was supposed to protect. Before I tell you what happened after that toast, how a single "what fund" turned into lawyers, bank records, and a kind of revenge my parents never saw coming, tell me in the comments, what time is it for you right now, and where in the world are you watching from? I want to see just how far this Christmas disaster travels, because trust me, by the end of this story, you'll be asking yourself what your own family isn't telling you. The silence after Jamie's whisper didn't feel like a pause. It felt like someone had hit mute on my whole life. The clinking cutlery stopped. The fake laughter died mid-breath. Even the Christmas music from the living room suddenly seemed too loud, like it didn't belong in this version of reality. My grandma's smile slowly crumpled as she looked from my stunned face to my parents' panic. "Linda? Greg?" she asked carefully, her gaze bouncing between them. "You told her about the fund, right?" My mom recovered first, but not in a way that made me feel any better. She forced out this brittle little laugh that sounded like it could shatter. "Mom, can we not do this right now?" she said, eyes flashing at her. "It's Christmas. Let's just enjoy dinner." My heartbeat wasn't just racing. It was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "No," I said, and my own voice surprised me. It came out steady, sharp. "We are absolutely doing this right now." "What college fund?" My dad set his glass down so hard the ice clinked against the sides. He didn't meet my eyes. "Natalie, lower your voice," he muttered. "We'll talk about this later." I leaned forward, fingers digging into the edge of the table, Every year of stress and humiliation sharpening into something cold. Later, I repeated, I've been cleaning tables until midnight, taking out loans in my name, choosing between groceries and textbooks, and you're telling me there was a fund this entire time? My grandma's eyes widened, the color draining from her face. You mean you've been paying with loans? She asked slowly. We've been sending money for you since you were a baby. We started that so you wouldn't have to worry like your mother did. Her words hit harder than any insult. In a flash, I remembered every conversation where my parents sighed and said, "We just can't help you right now, Nat. Money's tight, okay? Be grateful you even got into college." All those nights I cried quietly over my banking app, the pit in my stomach when I signed another loan, the way they told me I was being dramatic whenever I panicked. Suddenly all of it felt different. I hadn't just been unlucky, I'd been lied to. My mom's tone snapped from nervous to defensive in an instant. "You don't understand what we've been dealing with," she shot back. "The fund was for the family, not just some spending account for you. There were emergencies. We did what we had to do." "Emergencies?" I echoed, my voice turning razor sharp. "How much was in it?" My dad stared at his plate like the mashed potatoes were the most interesting thing in the world. "It's complicated," he said. "It's not a simple number." "Try me," I snapped. "Pick a number and start there." My grandma swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last time we checked," she said, glancing at my grandfather. "It was a little over 60,000, before they took over managing it." $60,000. The number ricocheted around my skull. I almost laughed because it didn't feel real. "You let me sign my life away to banks," I said, my throat burning, "while you burned through 60 grand that was supposed to keep me from doing exactly that?" No one answered. My uncle cleared his throat and suddenly found his phone fascinating. Jamie stared at his dessert, eyes huge. The Christmas lights kept blinking like some glitching background to a scene that never should have existed. I pushed my chair back so fast it scraped against the floor. "You know what?" I said, my voice trembling but loud. "I'm not going to scream in front of everybody and give you the chance to call me overdramatic again. Enjoy your dinner. Enjoy your perfect little holiday." I stood, forcing myself not to cry. Not yet. "But we're not done. You're going to show me exactly what you did with that money, every last cent. And when you do, don't you dare call it a misunderstanding or a family emergency. Call it what it is." I didn't wait for anyone to respond. I walked out of the dining room, feeling their stares burning into my back, one thought pounding in my skull with every step. If your own parents can quietly erase $60,000 meant for you, what else have they decided you don't deserve to know? Upstairs in my old bedroom, the noise from the dining room turned into a muffled blur, like a TV in the next apartment when you can't make out the words, just the shape of an argument. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the same faded posters and photo collages I'd slapped on the walls as a teenager. Back then, I thought the world was unfair. Sure, but I also believed my parents were doing their best with what they had. Now I was trying to process the fact that what they had apparently included a 5-figure fund with my name on it that somehow never reached me. Part of me wanted to march back downstairs and flip the table, throw every accusation I'd swallowed over the years right into their faces. Another part of me wanted to grab my bag, walk out the front door, and never step into this house again. Instead, I did the only thing that kept me from snapping completely. I made a mental list. I've always been a list person. Lists for homework, lists for bills, lists for what I could buy if I had an extra $20. Now I was listing lies. First lie: we wish we could help Nat, but we're broke. We're barely keeping the lights on. Second lie: every time they rolled their eyes when I cried over money and told me I was being dramatic. Third lie: if we had anything saved, it would go to you, you know that. We just never had that kind of help. Fourth lie, and somehow the cruelest, letting my grandparents believe their sacrifices were protecting me, while they quietly cashed in on them. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. I froze and moved closer to the door, leaving it just barely cracked. Voices drifted up the stairs, lower now, stripped of their holiday tone. "You should have kept your mother quiet," my dad hissed. "She always runs her mouth." "How was I supposed to know she'd bring it up?" my mom snapped back. "We said we'd handle it when the timing was right." "There is no right timing for this," he muttered. "If she goes to your parents and asks for statements, they'll see everything. You know how your father gets when he feels betrayed." My chest tightened. So Grandma and Grandpa might not know either. Whatever my parents had done, they'd managed to hide it on two fronts. "We had no choice," Mom said. But there was a wobble under the anger. We were drowning. The house, the car, Ethan's therapy, your hours getting cut. What were we supposed to do? Watch everything fall apart? "We didn't have to use that much," Dad replied, voice low. "But what's done is done. She can't undo it now. She'll calm down." They moved farther down the hall, their voices fading, but they'd already said enough. They didn't sound like parents who'd made one painful, desperate decision and planned to come clean. They sounded like people who'd built a life on hoping no one checked the receipts. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone. I didn't trust myself to wait, to talk calmly later, like they always insisted. I needed someone outside this house, someone who knew me before I became the difficult daughter with money issues. I called my best friend. "Tessa?" I said as soon as she picked up, skipping hello. "Hypothetical? If your parents secretly drained a $60,000 college fund your grandparents created for you and let you go into debt anyway, would you consider that theft?" She was quiet for exactly one beat. "I'd consider that a reason to burn their lives down to the ground," she said flatly. "Nat, what happened?" I paced the length of my room as I told her about the toast, the what fund, the way my parents reacted, the 60,000 figure, the conversation I'd just eavesdropped on. Saying it out loud made it feel both more real and more insane. "I don't even know the full amount," I finished, voice cracking. "I don't know how long they've been doing this. I just know I've been working myself sick while they've been, what, renovating? Paying off their credit cards?" "Okay," Tessa said, the words sharp with focus. "Step 1. You stop letting them control the story. Go to the only people who actually meant that money for you, your grandparents. Ask for the original paperwork, the statements, everything. And Nat?" "Yeah?" I whispered. "Document everything. Dates, numbers, conversations. If they were willing to drain that fund, they will absolutely be willing to gaslight you later and pretend it wasn't that bad." I stared at my reflection in the dark window, eyes red, jaw clenched. I didn't look like the girl who'd been apologizing for being a burden her whole life. I looked like someone who had finally found the line they wouldn't let anyone cross. By the time I hung up and lay down, staring at the ceiling, I knew two things with absolute clarity. I was going to my grandparents, and if my parents thought they could cry, guilt, or "we did our best" their way out of this, they were about to meet a version of me they didn't create and definitely didn't control. The next afternoon, the air in the house felt thick, like everyone was pretending nothing had happened while secretly waiting for me to explode. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I came downstairs, grabbed my coat, and said, "I'm going out for a bit." My mom glanced up from her phone. "Where?" she asked, the word loaded with suspicion. "Out," I replied. "I'll be back later." My dad's jaw tightened, but neither of them stopped me. Maybe they figured ignoring me would make this all go away, the way they'd ignored my stress for years. Grandma and Grandpa lived 15 minutes away in the same brick house they'd had since my mom was a teenager, the kind of place that smelled like coffee and old books and safety. When Grandma opened the door and saw my face, the concern in her eyes told me she already knew this wasn't just a casual visit. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, pulling me into a hug that made me feel 5 years old and heartbreakingly grown at the same time. "Come in. Your grandpa's in the kitchen." We sat at the table with steaming mugs between us, the same table where I'd done homework as a kid while Grandma quizzed me on spelling words. This time, there were no worksheets, just a truth I was done carrying alone. "Did you know," I asked, not bothering with small talk, "that I've been paying for college with loans and minimum wage jobs because Mom and Dad told me there was no money?" Grandpa's eyebrows knit together. "They said things were tight," he replied slowly, "that they were stretching to help with what they could. But they also told us the fund was helping, that it was making the difference." "Helping who?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "Because it wasn't helping me." I told them everything. The toast, my parents' reactions, Grandma's mention of 60,000, the conversation I heard in the hallway. By the time I finished, my grandparents looked 10 years older and somehow more solid at the same time. Grandpa's hands, usually steady, shook slightly as he folded them on the table. "We started that fund the week you were born," he said quietly. "Every Christmas, every birthday, any extra we could spare went into it. Your aunt and uncle chipped in a few times. We wanted to make sure you never had to choose between school and survival like your mother did." Grandma nodded, eyes glistening, not just with sadness, but with anger I'd never seen from her. "When you graduated high school, we met with the bank," she said. "We thought it made sense to put your parents as co-signers so they could help manage the tuition payments. The advisor said it would make everything easier. It never occurred to us that giving them access meant giving them temptation." "Did you ever see where the money actually went after that?" I asked. "Like, actual statements? Transfers?" Grandpa's gaze dropped. "Your mother told us not to worry about the details," he admitted. "She said she was handling your tuition directly with the school. We asked for updates. She said everything was covered and under control. The last official balance letter we saw was a few years back." "And then?" I pressed. "They stopped coming," Grandma said, her mouth tightening. "When we asked, your mother said they'd moved the account, that it was more efficient and we didn't need to be involved anymore. We trusted her." My stomach twisted. "The last balance you saw?" I asked. "Do you remember it?" Grandpa sighed. "We don't remember the exact cents, but it was around 78,000, he said. "You were about to start college. We were so relieved. We thought we'd done something right." 78. More than what had been casually thrown out at dinner. More than I'd let myself even imagine. "They told me there was nothing," I said, my voice shaking. "They let me believe I was starting from zero. They watched me work doubles and cry over loans and told me that was just part of being an adult." Grandma pushed back from the table suddenly, a fierce look sparking in her eyes. "Walter, get the folder," she said. "The big blue one." He disappeared down the hall and came back with a thick, worn binder. "We kept everything from those early years," he explained as he set it down. "Deposit slips, interest statements, the paperwork from when we added your parents as co-signers. After that, the bank switched to mostly digital, but we still have the last few letters they mailed before everything went online only." "I need to see the numbers," I said, my voice steadier now. "If I'm going to confront them again, I want facts, not just anger." We spread the papers across the table. There it was in black and white. Every birthday check, every "we don't need gifts, just put it in her fund." Every small sacrifice my grandparents had turned into a future they believed was waiting for me. The last official statement with their address showed a balance of 78,000 and change. I stared at that number until it blurred, until it felt like it was pressing down on my chest. "They didn't just fail to tell you," Grandma said quietly. "They erased us from the process and hoped you'd never ask questions." "If they emptied it," Grandpa added, his jaw clenched, "they didn't just betray you, they betrayed us, and everyone who gave $1 to that fund." Something inside me shifted then. I hadn't just been wronged as a daughter. I'd been robbed as a person, and the people who stole from me weren't strangers. They were the ones who were supposed to protect me most. "We're going to the bank as soon as it opens," Grandma said firmly. "We'll request every record we're allowed to see. If they moved it, we'll follow the trail. And Natalie, whatever we find, you are not crazy, you are not greedy, and you are not overreacting. You were betrayed, and you deserve the truth." Her words didn't erase the hurt, but they did something almost better. They gave it shape, and they gave me a direction. I wasn't just going to rage at my parents. I was going to expose exactly what they'd done, piece by piece, until there was nowhere left for them to hide. Monday at the bank felt less like an errand and more like a heist. Except we weren't stealing. We were taking back the truth. Grandma, Grandpa, and I sat in stiff chairs while a polite manager pulled up records on his computer. "The account was originally opened in your grandparents' names, with Natalie as beneficiary," he explained, scrolling. "About 3 years ago, it was closed and the balance was transferred to a joint account under Greg and Linda Brooks." 3 years? I repeated. "So my last 3 years of college, the most expensive ones, they had the money in their own names?" The manager cleared his throat. "I can't speak to intent," he said, "but I can print the transaction history." When he slid the papers across the desk, I felt my throat tighten. We took them back to my grandparents' kitchen and laid them out like evidence in a crime drama. And honestly, it looked exactly like that. There were tuition payments for my first year. That much was true. Then, other things. $4,000 to a car dealership, 3 separate payments to a home renovation company, multiple transfers labeled credit card payoff, a withdrawal the same day my little brother Ethan got his gaming PC, a vacation package, here and there, a hospital bill or a pharmacy charge. But the pattern was clear. The college fund had become the everything we want and don't want to budget for fund. My chest burned. "They told me they couldn't afford to help with textbooks," I said, my voice shaking, "while they used my education money to redo the kitchen." "This is worse than we feared," Grandpa muttered. "They didn't just dip into it. They treated it like a bonus." Grandma's jaw clenched. "And they let you drown in debt." I snapped pictures of every page, then scanned them into my laptop. Tessa was on video call, her face a mixture of fury and grim satisfaction. "You know what this is, right?" she said. "You have proof. This isn't just a messy family argument anymore. This is financial abuse." "They're my parents," I said quietly. "Do I really want to drag them into court?" "Let me flip that," she replied. "They're your parents. Did they really want to watch you sign for tens of thousands in loans while they spent your fund on granite countertops?" The question lodged in my chest. I imagined future Natalie, 10 years from now, still paying interest on loans that never had to exist, still smiling awkwardly at family dinners while they pretended nothing had happened. "Absolutely not," I said. "I'm not going to spend my 30s paying for their lies." That night, I emailed a legal clinic my university recommended for students. I attached redacted copies of the statements and explained everything. The lawyer who replied didn't sugarcoat it. It would be complicated, ugly, and painful. But yes, I had a case. "Start with a demand for repayment in writing," she suggested. "Give them a chance to fix it before you escalate. But make it clear you're prepared to escalate." So I wrote a letter. Not as their daughter, but as the person they'd stolen from. I listed the original intention of the fund, The amounts, the transfers, the fact that I'd taken out loans because they told me there was no money. I gave them two options: agree in writing to a repayment plan, including selling assets if necessary, or I would pursue legal action and involve the rest of the family. When I was done, I read it out loud to my grandparents. Grandpa nodded once. "It's firm, not cruel," he said. "You're not out for blood. You're asking for justice." Maybe so, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that wanted them to feel even a fraction of the helplessness they'd put me through. I printed the letter, slid it into an envelope, and looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. For years, I'd been the kid who apologized for taking up space. Now I was the woman about to confront her parents with proof of their betrayal and a deadline. I didn't just slip the letter under their door. I wanted them to look me in the eye. So I texted, "We need to talk. All of us. Tonight." They agreed, maybe thinking this would be another emotional scene they could smooth over with half-truths, and "we did our best" speeches. They had no idea my grandparents were walking in behind me. We sat at the dining table again, but this time there was no Christmas tree, no music, no excuses about not ruining the holiday. Just four adults, two grandparents, and a stack of paper. I put the letter in the center of the table and set my phone down with the voice recorder quietly running. "You moved my college fund into your names," I began, my voice level. "You used it for a car, a kitchen remodel, credit cards, gadgets, and only partially for tuition. You let me take out loans and work myself into the ground while lying to me and your parents. I have the bank records to prove it." My mom's face drained of color. My dad's turned red. "You went through our finances?" he demanded. "No," I said. "I went through my fund. The one Grandma and Grandpa created for me, the one you were supposed to protect." Grandpa slid the printed statements across the table. "We trusted you," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "We thought you were paying her school. Instead, you remodeled your house." Mom's composure cracked. "You don't understand what it was like," she snapped. "The recession, the bills, Ethan's therapy. I see the hospital payments." I cut in. "I'm not heartless, but explain the vacation package, the SUV, the gaming PC." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "We are your parents," he said. "We have sacrificed everything for this family. You sitting here treating us like criminals is disgusting." "You're right," I replied. "You're my parents. That's what makes this worse. Parents are supposed to protect their kids' future, not cash it out." I slid the letter toward them. "I'm not here to yell. I'm here to give you a choice. Option 1, you sign this agreement. You acknowledge in writing what you did, and you agree to sell the SUV and refinance the house if you have to, so you can start paying off my loans and rebuild what you took. Option 2, I file a civil case. I send these records to every relative who ever contributed to that fund, and you explain to a judge why your daughter is drowning in debt while you've been driving around in a car paid for with her education." Mom stared at the paper like it might explode. "You wouldn't," she whispered. I leaned back. "I already spoke to a lawyer. I absolutely would." The room pulsed with anger, shame, fear. Everything but the one thing I wanted from them: genuine remorse. "You're ungrateful," Dad said finally, his voice low. "We kept a roof over your head. We did what we had to do." "Then own it," I said. "Sign and we'll handle this privately. Don't, and we do it publicly." Mom grabbed the paper and scanned it, her hands trembling. "You're going to destroy this family over money?" she choked out. "No," I answered. "You already did that. I'm just refusing to be the only one paying the price." No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Dad stood up, fists clenched. "Get out," he said. "We're not making decisions with you cornering us like this." "You have 72 hours," I replied calmly. "After that, I move forward without you." I picked up my phone. stopped the recording, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just left, knowing that whatever they chose next would tell me everything I needed to know about who they really were. I thought the worst they could do was refuse to sign. I was wrong. The first sign they'd chosen war, not repair, was the group text. My aunt sent it to me with a screenshot and a single message. "You need to see this. It was from my mom, sent to half the family. Natalie is threatening to sue us over her college fund," she'd written. "We used it to keep this family afloat. And now she's calling us thieves. Please pray for us. We don't know what we did to deserve this level of disrespect." For a second, the old me, the people-pleasing daughter, wanted to shrink, to explain, to fix the narrative. Then my aunt followed up with a second screenshot. Grandma had replied all. For anyone confused about the situation, she'd written, "Greg and Linda drained the education fund Walter and I created for Natalie. We have bank statements. Natalie has every right to ask for repayment. This isn't disrespect. It's consequences." My phone buzzed for hours after that. Cousins asking what was going on. An uncle quietly admitting he'd contributed a few thousand when I was little because he believed in the college fund. Half the family went silent. The other half took my side. My parents didn't respond to my deadline. Instead, they tried to win the sympathy war and lost it. On the 72nd hour, I sent my lawyer everything. Screenshots, recordings, statements, the letter they'd ignored. Filing the case felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life. But underneath the nausea was something steadier. Relief. Actions were finally following words. The threat of court did what my begging never did. A week later, my parents called my grandparents, not me. They wanted to mediate without lawyers, to keep things out of the system. Grandma refused to meet without me present. So we all ended up at her house, around her kitchen table this time. No decorations, no pretense, just numbers. "We can't pay it all back at once," Dad said, staring at his hands. "If we sell the SUV and take out a second mortgage, we can give you maybe half now and set up a plan for the rest." Mom's voice was small. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Nat. We just kept telling ourselves we'd catch up before you ever noticed." "You didn't," I said. "And now I'm the one who would be paying for this for the next 20 years. We negotiated, with my lawyer on speaker. It was cold, awkward, transactional. In the end, they agreed to sell the SUV, cut their vacations, downsize eventually, and sign a legally binding repayment plan that would knock out my highest interest loans within 2 years and rebuild a smaller fund in my name they couldn't touch. Was it perfect justice? No. The money they'd already burned on things that couldn't be undone was gone forever. But it was real consequences. Lifestyle changes, legal obligations, a paper trail that would follow them if they tried to weasel out again. When the documents were signed, Mom reached for my hand, eyes wet. "Can we fix this?" she whispered. I pulled my hand back. "I hope someday we can have some kind of relationship," I said honestly. "But it won't be the one we had before. I needed parents. You chose being comfortable over being honest. That doesn't disappear just because you finally got caught." In the months that followed, the payments started arriving, directly to my loan servicers, just like the agreement required. My balance dropped faster than I'd ever dared to imagine. I picked up fewer shifts. For the first time, I allowed myself to think about grad school without immediately doing interest math in my head. Holidays changed. I spent them with my grandparents, with Tessa, with friends who had become chosen family. Sometimes my parents called or texted, sometimes I answered. I wasn't out for endless revenge. I didn't need them to suffer forever. I just needed them to feel, with their bank accounts, not just their tears, what it meant to steal someone's future. I still don't know if I'll ever fully forgive them. Maybe forgiveness isn't a single moment. Maybe it's 1,000 small decisions not to let their choices define the rest of my life. But I do know this. I stopped being the kid who smiled through betrayal to keep the peace. I chose myself, my future, and the truth, no matter how messy it made Christmas dinner. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have taken them to court, cut them off completely, or tried to forgive without demanding anything back?